Breakfast cereals are more than just food, they're memories poured straight into a bowl. For decades, cereal companies weren't just selling sugar-coated flakes or crunchy corn puffs. They were selling fun, imagination, and a little bit of magic to start your day. And for kids growing up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, opening a box of cereal wasn't just about breakfast, it was about prizes, mascots, and Saturday morning cartoons. But here's the thing. While some cereals like Frosted Flakes and Cheerios have stood the test of time, countless others came and went, leaving behind only memories, commercials, and maybe an unopened box or two on eBay. These were the cereals that defined childhoods, sparked playground conversations, and then vanished. Some were tied to cartoons, some to movies, some to trends that fizzled out just as quickly as they appeared. Today, we're taking a trip back to the cereal aisle of yesterday. We're counting down 30 forgotten breakfast cereals that disappeared from grocery shelves, but never from our memories. From the Marshmallow Pact to the downright bizarre, each of these cereals tells a story about the times we lived in. So grab a spoon, pour some milk, and let's dig in, because this is going to be one sweet ride. Point 1. Waffalos cereal, 1979, 1980s. What if your morning cereal tasted just like waffles dripping with maple syrup? That was the promise of Waffalos. Released in 1979 by Ralston, Waffalos was designed to taste like mini waffles in a box. The cereal had a distinct maple syrup flavor, something no other cereal really offered at the time. The mascot was Waffle Boy, a cartoon lumberjack who lived in Waffle Land and promoted the cereal with catchy commercials. The late 70s and early 80s were all about experimenting with flavors, and Waffalos stood out because it offered kids a chance to eat what tasted like dessert for breakfast. It was unique, memorable, and tapped into the comfort food appeal of waffles. Despite its uniqueness, Waffalos disappeared by the mid-80s. Some say its strong maple taste wasn't for everyone, and with so many sugary competitors, it couldn't hold on. But for those who tried it, the taste of Waffalos is etched forever in memory. A rare cereal that dared to be different. Point 2. Smurf Berry Crunch, 1983 to 1989. Imagine pouring a bowl of blue and red cereal that promised to taste just like Smurf berries. In 1983, Post launched Smurf Berry Crunch to ride the wave of Smurfmania. The cartoon was at its peak, and kids were obsessed with anything Smurf branded. The cereal featured fruit-flavored corn pieces in blue and red, with commercials showing the Smurfs gathering berries to make the cereal. This wasn't just a cereal, it was a way to bring your Saturday morning cartoon heroes to the breakfast table. The fruity flavors and colorful presentation were irresistible to kids. By the late 80s, as the Smurf craze began to fade, so did the cereal. But collectors still hunt down old boxes and memorabilia. It's a prime example of how tied cereals were to pop culture. Once the show's popularity dipped, the cereal vanished almost overnight. Point 3. C-3PO's cereal, 1984 to 1986. A Star Wars cereal shaped like twin rings, tied to the galaxy's most famous droid. Released by Kellogg's in 1984, C-3PO's cereal capitalized on the success of Return of the Jedi. The cereal pieces were shaped like little figure-eights, marketed as twin rings, and had a honey-flavored, crunchy taste similar to Cheerios but sweeter. Star Wars was more than a movie, it was a cultural phenomenon. C-3PO's cereal allowed kids to extend their Star Wars experience into breakfast. The box featured collectible cutouts and promotions, making it more than just food, it was fandom in a bowl. Despite Star Wars' massive popularity, the cereal only lasted 2 years. Many fans criticized it as being too similar to other cereals, with branding doing the heavy lifting. Still, unopened boxes are now rare collectibles that sell for high prices, proof that nostalgia always wins. Point 4. Urkel OS, 1991 to 1993. Did I do that? Yes, Urkel did, even in cereal form. Launched in 1991 by Ralston, Urkel OS was based on the mega-popular character Steve Urkel from Family Matters. The cereal featured colorful red and yellow loops, and the box was covered in Urkel's goofy smile and signature catchphrases. Urkel was one of the most recognizable TV characters of the early 90s. Kids loved him, adults knew him, and the cereal tapped perfectly into his quirky popularity. Despite its bright colors and celebrity tie-in, Urkel OS quickly fizzled. The cereal was more gimmick than great taste, and once the novelty wore off, so did sales. Today, it's remembered as a strange but charming footnote in TV history, and an example of just how powerful character branding was in the cereal aisle. Point 5. Wacky's cereal, 1965, 1960s. What if your cereal box came with a whoopee cushion? That was Wackies. Introduced by General Mills in the mid-1960s, Wackies was corn cereal pieces flavored with peanut butter. But what really made it stand out was the marketing. Kids could send away for wacky prizes like fake dog vomit, dribble glasses, or yes, a whoopee cushion. In an era before video games and YouTube, kids lived for pranks, and Wackies tapped directly into that mischievous side of childhood. The cereal itself wasn't groundbreaking, but the branding made it memorable. It was like breakfast and a joke shop rolled into one. Wackies didn't last long, disappearing within just a few years. Peanut butter cereals weren't yet mainstream, and parents weren't always thrilled about encouraging prankster behavior. Still, for the kids who got their hands on those wacky prizes, Wackies remains one of the funniest cereals ever made. Point 6. Mr. T cereal, 1984-1990s. I pity the fool who skips breakfast. Mr. T had his own cereal. Launched by Quaker Oats in 1984, Mr. T cereal came at the height of his fame from the A-Team and Rocky III. The cereal itself was simple, crunchy corn and oat pieces shaped like the letter T. Mr. T was larger than life, and kids idolized him. The cereal was tied into his tough but kind persona, and commercials showed him urging kids to eat right and stay in school. It was part breakfast, part positive messaging. Despite strong branding, the cereal was essentially Captain Crunch in a new shape. Once Mr. T's pop culture presence began to fade, so did the cereal. But it lives on in nostalgia, even making a cameo in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, where Pee-wee eats a bowl of Mr. T cereal for breakfast. Point 7. E.T. cereal, 1984-1985. Reese's Pieces weren't the only sweet E.T. tie-in, he had a cereal too. In 1984, General Mills cashed in on E.T. the Extraterrestrial's success with a peanut butter and chocolate-flavored cereal. The pieces were shaped like the letters E and T. Kids already loved E.T., and the Reese's Pieces connection gave the cereal instant credibility. With commercials featuring the alien himself, breakfast suddenly felt like a trip to outer space. Despite the movie's popularity, the cereal only lasted a year. Critics said it was too sweet and too similar to other chocolate cereals. But for fans, it was a brief, magical crossover between movies and mornings. Point 8. Ghostbusters cereal, 1985-1990. Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters cereal. Released by Ralston in 1985 to tie into the blockbuster movie, Ghostbusters cereal featured fruity corn puffs with white marshmallow ghosts. Later, pink marshmallows were added to represent the cartoon's slime. The 80s were all about movie tie-ins, and Ghostbusters was one of the biggest cultural hits of the decade. Eating Ghostbusters cereal felt like being part of the team. Kids could literally bust ghosts with every spoonful. Despite its popularity, it disappeared by 1990. Like many tie-in cereals, once the cartoon faded from TV, so did the product. Today, Ghostbusters fans still mourn its disappearance, especially given its perfect mix of fun and flavor. Point 9. Batman cereal, 1989-1991. When Tim Burton's Batman hit theaters in 1989, breakfast got a dark and crunchy makeover. Batman cereal was released by Ralston in 1989 as part of the massive merchandising blitz around the film. The cereal consisted of bat-shaped yellow corn pieces, packaged in a shiny black box with the iconic Batman logo. The Batman movie was a cultural event, and kids couldn't get enough of the dark, edgy superhero. The cereal became a collector's item, and the box itself was as much of a draw as the product inside. The cereal itself was bland and drew criticism for being flavorless. Still, the packaging became a pop culture artifact, and unopened boxes are now prized collectibles, worth far more than the cereal ever was. Point 10. Nintendo cereal system, 1988-1989. 2 cereals, 1 box. Just like a Nintendo cartridge, it was a double feature. Ralston launched the Nintendo cereal system in 1988, capitalizing on the Nintendo craze. The box was split into 2 bags, one for Super Mario Bros., fruity shapes, and one for The Legend of Zelda, berry-flavored pieces. For kids in the late 80s, Nintendo was life. Having cereal that matched your favorite games was pure magic. The commercials even featured kids jumping into video game worlds through their cereal bowls. The cereal only lasted a year, making it one of the shortest-lived cereals ever. Today, unopened boxes sell for hundreds on eBay, proving its cult status. Perfect. Let's build momentum by doing points 11 to 13, S'mores Crunch, ice cream cone cereal, Sprinkle Spangles, together in one continuous flow. Point 11. S'mores Crunch, 1982. Campfires, toasted marshmallows, and melted chocolate, all packed into a cereal box. That was the promise of S'mores Crunch, one of the earliest attempts to turn a classic dessert into breakfast. Launched by General Mills in 1982, S'mores Crunch was made of graham cracker squares mixed with marshmallows and chocolate pieces. The idea was to capture the taste of the campfire treat without the mess. Its commercials leaned heavily on the outdoorsy vibe, showing kids enjoying the cereal as if it was a camping adventure every morning. It was one of the first cereals to attempt a dessert-to-breakfast crossover, paving the way for many others. For kids, the novelty was irresistible. S'mores weren't something you could eat every day, but this cereal made it possible. Parents were skeptical, but the nostalgia factor for camping trips helped it gain a loyal fan base. Despite its uniqueness, it didn't last long. Critics complained it was too sweet even by cereal standards, and by the mid-80s, S'mores Crunch was gone. Today, fans still remember it as one of the most ambitious dessert cereals of its time, a sugary dream that faded too quickly. Point 12. Ice Cream Cones Cereal, 1987. If donuts could be cereal, why not ice cream cones? That was exactly the logic behind one of the most whimsical cereals of the 80s. Released in 1987 by General Mills, Ice Cream Cones cereal featured little crunchy cone-shaped pieces with marshmallow scoops on top. The mascot was a cheerful character named Ice Cream Jones, who delivered the cereal in colorful commercials that made it look like every kid's fantasy. It was pure kid appeal, fun shapes, sweet flavors, and a mascot that looked like he walked straight out of a Saturday morning cartoon. The cereal didn't need to be healthy, it just needed to be fun, and in that sense, it nailed its purpose. But just like a real ice cream cone left in the sun, its time was short-lived. Parents complained about the sugar, and by the late 80s, it melted away from shelves. It had a brief comeback in 2003, but nostalgia alone wasn't enough to save it. Today, it's remembered as one of the most playful cereals of the decade. Point 13. Sprinkle Spangles, 1993 to 1998. Glittery, colorful, and over-the-top, Sprinkle Spangles looked like a birthday party poured straight into a cereal bowl. Introduced by General Mills in 1993, Sprinkle Spangles were star-shaped corn puffs coated in rainbow sprinkles. The mascot was the Sprinkle Genie, voiced by Dom DeLuise, who granted kids wishes for a fun and magical breakfast. In the 90s, fun shapes and bright colors were everything, and Sprinkle Spangles delivered. The sprinkles made it stand out from every other cereal, and the commercials leaned hard into the magic of getting your wish for a sweeter, more exciting breakfast. But novelty wears off quickly, and parents weren't thrilled about a cereal that was essentially frosted corn puffs dipped in sugar confetti. By 1998, it was discontinued. Still, kids who grew up in the 90s remember it vividly, because how could you forget a cereal that looked like edible glitter? Today, Sprinkle Spangles is one of the most requested Bring It Back cereals, proving that sometimes the brightest stars burn out the fastest. Perfect. Let's dive into points 14 to 15, Batman cereal and Ghostbusters cereal, together, since both were tied to blockbuster movie mania. Point 14. Batman cereal, 1989 to 1990. In 1989, Batman wasn't just conquering the box office, he was taking over your breakfast table. When Tim Burton's Batman hit theaters in 1989, it sparked a tidal wave of merchandise. General Mills jumped in with Batman cereal, sold in a shiny black box shaped like the bat signal. The cereal itself was made of crunchy, yellow bat-shaped pieces that looked like a mix between Captain Crunch and Cheerios. This was peak 80s/90s marketing, turning blockbuster movies into cereals. Kids didn't even care what it tasted like. They wanted it because it was Batman. The box also included collectible Batman bank toys, which made it even more of a must-have for fans. For a brief time, eating Batman cereal felt like being part of the hype machine for one of the biggest movies of the decade. Like many promotional cereals, it didn't last long. Once the movie hype died down, so did sales. By the early 90s, it disappeared, but the memory of that shiny black box still lingers for fans who grew up during the Batman craze. It wasn't just cereal, it was a souvenir from one of pop culture's biggest moments. Point 15. Ghostbusters cereal, 1985 to 1989. Who you gonna call when you're hungry at breakfast? In the mid-80s, the answer was Ghostbusters cereal. Launched in 1985 by Ralston, Ghostbusters cereal was tied to both the hit movie and the animated spin-off The Real Ghostbusters. It featured fruit-flavored corn pieces with marshmallows shaped like ghosts and the iconic No Ghost logo. The commercials even had the Ghostbusters theme song reworked to promote the cereal, making it impossible not to sing along. For kids in the 80s, Ghostbusters was the pop culture phenomenon. Having a cereal tied to it made breakfast feel like an extension of Saturday morning cartoons. It had the right mix of sweet flavor and marshmallow fun, and the packaging, with Slimer grinning on the front, was instantly collectible. Despite its popularity, Ghostbusters cereal was discontinued by the late 80s as movie tie-in cereals often had short lifespans. But it left behind one of the most memorable mashups of pop culture and breakfast. Fans today look back on it as the ultimate example of when cereal companies weren't just selling food, they were selling a piece of a movie universe you could eat. Great choice. Let's bundle points 16 to 18, Mr. T cereal, Donkey Kong cereal, Pac-Man cereal, since all three tapped into the 80s obsession with larger-than-life pop icons and video games. Point 16. Mr. T cereal, 1984 to 1993. I pity the fool who skips breakfast. In the 80s, Mr. T wasn't just on TV, he was in your cereal bowl. Introduced by Quaker Oats in 1984, Mr. T cereal was corn and oat puffs shaped like the letter T. It debuted at the height of Mr. T's fame. He was starring in the A-Team, appearing in cartoons, and basically ruling kids' entertainment. The cereal even made a cameo in the movie Pee-wee's Big Adventure, cementing its pop culture status. It wasn't just cereal, it was a badge of fandom. Kids wanted to eat what their hero ate, and Mr. T's tough guy image made breakfast feel like an adventure. Plus, the bold red and yellow box featuring Mr. T's scowling face was unforgettable on store shelves. Despite lasting almost a decade, Mr. T cereal eventually faded as his star power dimmed. Still, for many kids of the 80s, it remains one of the most iconic celebrity cereals ever made. Point 17. Donkey Kong cereal, 1982 to 1983. When arcade fever gripped America, even your breakfast table wasn't safe. Donkey Kong came crashing in with his own cereal. Ralston launched Donkey Kong cereal in 1982, right when the arcade game was at its peak. The cereal was shaped like little crunchy barrels, a nod to the game's most famous obstacle. Ads pitched it as crunchy barrels of fun for breakfast, directly targeting kids who spent hours at the arcade. It was one of the earliest video game cereals, and the novelty alone made it exciting. For a generation obsessed with quarters, joysticks, and arcade high scores, pouring a bowl of Donkey Kong cereal felt like bringing the game home. Unfortunately, like many novelty cereals, it had a short run, gone by 1983. But it set the stage for future gaming tie-ins, proving that video game fandom could spill over into food. Today, boxes of Donkey Kong cereal are prized collector's items among retro gamers. Point 18. Pac-Man cereal, 1983 to 1987. In the 80s, Pac-Man wasn't just gobbling nuts, he was gobbling his way into breakfast bowls across America. Introduced by General Mills in 1983, Pac-Man cereal combined corn puffs with marshmallows shaped like Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man, and the iconic ghosts. The commercials were as colorful as the arcade game, featuring Pac-Man characters dancing around to upbeat jingles. Pac-Man was more than a game, it was a cultural phenomenon. Having a cereal made the craze even bigger, letting kids play Pac-Man at breakfast. The addition of Ms. Pac-Man marshmallows later on kept it fresh and appealing as the franchise grew. The cereal lasted a surprisingly long time, until 1987, but eventually disappeared as the arcade craze slowed. Still, it remains one of the most beloved video game tie-in cereals ever, remembered for its bright yellow pieces and fun commercials. Perfect. Let's move into points 19 to 20, Nintendo Cereal System and Cabbage Patch Kids cereal. These two cereals were born directly out of the 80s obsession with cultural crazes, one driven by gaming and the other by the toy aisle. Point 19. Nintendo Cereal System, 1988 to 1989. In the late 80s, Nintendo wasn't just dominating living rooms, it was trying to dominate breakfast with one of the strangest cereals ever made. Launched in 1988 by Ralston, the Nintendo Cereal System was a dual-box cereal that contained two different cereals in one package. One side was themed after Super Mario Bros., fruity shapes of Mario, mushrooms, and Koopa Troopas, and the other was themed after The Legend of Zelda, berry-flavored pieces shaped like Link, hearts, and keys. This was the golden age of Nintendo, when Mario and Zelda were redefining gaming. The cereal tapped into kids' obsession, giving them a way to extend the Nintendo world into their mornings. The split-box design was especially unique. It looked like two cereals fused together, which made it a collector's dream even at the time. Despite its clever concept, The cereal only lasted about a year before vanishing, making it one of the rarest tie-in cereals of the 80s. Today, unopened boxes sell for hundreds of dollars on eBay. What was once just a sugary breakfast gimmick has now become a holy grail for retro collectors. Point 20. Cabbage Patch Kids cereal, 1985 to 1986. In the mid-80s, the toy craze that had parents fighting in store aisles also tried to conquer breakfast, but not everyone had the stomach for it. Introduced in 1985 by Ralston, Cabbage Patch Kids cereal was marketed as a healthy alternative in an era when most cereals were sugar bombs. The cereal featured small, round oat pieces with fruit flavor bits sprinkled in. The box designs showcased different Cabbage Patch characters, playing off the mania that had turned these dolls into the hottest toys of the decade. The Cabbage Patch brand was so massive that slapping the name on a cereal seemed like an easy win. Parents who had already bought into the craze were expected to pass that loyalty onto the breakfast table. For kids, the connection to their beloved dolls was a novelty, even if the cereal itself was underwhelming. Unlike other flashy tie-in cereals, this one flopped almost instantly. Kids weren't excited by a healthy option, and the taste was often described as bland. Within about a year, it was gone. In a way, it proved that not every craze could be successfully turned into cereal, and that sometimes brand loyalty doesn't transfer to the breakfast bowl. Breakfast cereals were never just about food, they were about fun. From the moment you poured a box into your bowl, you weren't just eating, you were stepping into a colorful world of cartoons, superheroes, and pop culture icons. Whether it was the neon crunch of Smuff Berry Crunch, the ghostly marshmallows of Ghostbusters cereal, or the honey sweet crunch of Batman's logo, these cereals turned mornings into mini adventures. For parents, they were an easy way to bring a smile to their kids' faces. For kids, they were more than just breakfast. They were collectibles, bragging rights at the lunch table, and sometimes even the prize at the bottom of the box mattered more than the cereal itself. These cereals tapped into the magic of childhood imagination. But like all good things, they didn't last. Marketing trends shifted, new fads took over, and some flavors just couldn't compete against the sugary heavyweights that survived the decades. Still, the memory of these cereals lives on, not just in vintage commercials on YouTube or dusty eBay listings, but in the hearts of the kids who grew up with them. Think about it. You probably can't remember what you had for breakfast yesterday, but you can remember the taste of Urkel OS, the crunch of Waffle-Os, or the thrill of opening a Ghostbusters box for the prize inside. That's the power of nostalgia. It sticks with us long after the flavors fade. So the next time you pour yourself a bowl of cereal, think back to these forgotten classics. They remind us of a time when Saturday mornings were sacred, TV shows and toys ruled our world, and even something as simple as breakfast felt like an event. These cereals may be gone from the shelves, but they'll never disappear from memory. Because sometimes the best part of growing up is never quite letting go of the things that made us smile.